Hello, everyone, and welcome to Dominating Your Market in 2013. My name is Mike Wells, and I'm the workshop coordinator for you today. With us today, we have Mark Powers, Atticus founder, and Steve Riley, an attorney and Atticus practice advisor. Mark, why don't you begin today by telling us what the Dominate Your Market program is all about?
Thanks, Mike. And welcome, Steve.
Thank you.
So the Dominate Your Market is an advanced coaching program, and it's designed not only to transform successful attorneys' experience of the law practice, but it's to provide them a competitive advantage that will last a lifetime and ensure that they are the absolute go-to attorney in their marketplace. And so the question that comes up for most people when Steve and I talk about the Dominate Your Market program is, why would I play a game called Dominate Your Market? And Steve and I are going to talk a little bit about the trends that are going on that we say make it absolutely crucial for people to be thinking about not only dominate the market, but taking their practice to a next level competitively. And I just want to say something about the observations that Steve and I are going to make. Many of you know Steve, who's really top practice advisor, if not the top practice advisor in the country. And Steve is an expert innovator. But one of the things that Steve and I have talked about is the trends and the things that are coming down the line. Steve did a YouTube video on 5 predictions that we see coming in the market. And so we'll talk about some of the observations from that. But if you'd like to see that YouTube video, I would go to YouTube, search Atticus Coach, and as you go down, you'll see one on Steve, and that could be helpful as you listen to this. So I think some of these trends most people know about, or at least we hope you know by now, and it's just the sheer growth in the supply of legal services. So in 1968, we had roughly 168,000 licensed lawyers in this country. By 1980, we're up to 680,000. Year 2000, we'd cross over 1 million licensed attorneys. And in 2012, we hit a little over 1.2 million licensed attorneys. So in the United States, that translates to 1 attorney for every 340 Americans in this country. And if you were living in the state where Steve and I are headquartered in Florida, it translates to 1 attorney for every 260 Floridians. But at the same time, we've seen this growth in licensed lawyers. We also know that law schools have been pumping out students. So 45,000 graduated last year. Steve, what's the number of the law students actually getting a job, the ones that graduated in the legal profession? Do you remember?
Yes, Mark. It's actually a fascinating trend. You're seeing in 2012, 1 out of 2 graduates actually found jobs. So you have a 50% unemployment rate among lawyers that graduated in 2012. And we're waiting now to see what the 2013 numbers look like, but I anticipate the 2013 numbers to be worse than the 2012 numbers.
And so what this does for us is it keeps pumping legal services into the marketplace. So there's no governor on this profession like you see in the medical practice. And at the same time, internationally, we see India graduating 70,000 English-speaking attorneys every single year. We see the development. I know that some of you have watched this and sort of scoffed at it for a while, things like LegalZoom. But LegalZoom posted a $156 million profit in 2011. We don't know what their 2012 numbers are. Google Ventures put $18 million into Rocket Lawyer. And then we see innovations just coming down the way on different types of practices. And you'll see this quite a bit. But a company out of, for you matrimonial attorneys, there's a company out of Canada called Fairway Divorces, which is taking a whole different approach to the marketplace with divorce. And you can Google them and look at them. But, you know, it's only a matter of time, and Steve jokes about this sometimes, it's only a matter of time before, in addition to optometrists and pharmacies, you're going to see legal clinics at things like Walmart. And so what does all of this tell us? Some of this hopefully should unnerve you. But ultimately, it comes down to some of the bigger observations that Steve and myself and a few other Atticus have been talking about. We know that the 2008 recession really accelerated a lot of the trends. So you've listened to futurists over the years, and they've said this is going to happen and this is going to happen. And we've been watching these trends for a while. But what we know is that after 2008, things got more stressful for you. They got more, the competition got tighter for almost everyone. And in addition to that, all of these trends that we've talked about, the competitive forces, technological advances, the economic the pressures from the economic shifts, legislative, tort reform, tax reform, and also your client demands are changing over time, and I think you all know this. But what this does is it drives commoditization in the legal services. And so what that means is, Steve, do you want to say anything about commoditization before I jump into it, because you're so good with this?
You know, it's an important thing to realize that lawyers are feeling more and more fee pressure, and those lawyers that are doing fixed price work or flat fee agreements are also feeling greater pressure. And there's two components of this. First thing is to really recognize what a commodity is. And when you're really commoditized, you know it because the service that you're providing, the number one question is, what is the price? And so when you're in a commoditized marketplace, the price is the number one driver, and the price is the thing that drives it. So when you start, whether you're providing estate planning services or family law or what, when the leading common conversation is, what does it cost? You know that you're in trouble because you're playing in a commoditized marketplace.
Well,
and this is
go ahead. I'm sorry, Steve.
No, and this is further compounded by the fact that if we talk about the amount of lawyers coming into the marketplace, you're seeing younger and younger lawyers who've got no training, no expertise, opening up practices, and they don't know how to compete. So the only way they know how to compete is to drive pricing downward. So they try and offer cheaper services because they can't compete on expertise or experience. So you're seeing kind of a compounding effect here around fees. And what happens is, if you've got a lawyer that's been practicing maybe 5 to 10 years, they've fallen into a rut. They don't know how to compete now other than pricing. And if you see lawyers who are past the age, in my experience, 55 to 60, and they may be at a partner level or a senior partner level, their goal is to hang on until retirement and let the junior partners figure it out. So you're seeing this in the marketplace. You hear it in bar associations. You hear people talking about it, but no one knows what to do about it.
And be clear that neither Steve or I or anyone else at Atticus is saying that's where we're going to compete. Exactly. As a matter of fact, we're the exact opposite. But these are the pressures that are going on in the marketplace. And what we do know is that 80% of attorneys' incomes will stagnate or drop in the coming years. And so we've seen stagnation for a while, but you're going to see a lot more dropping for income in the next couple of years. And so if you've been following Atticus or participating in Atticus at any time over the years, you know that we've always worked on trying to develop a competitive advantage for you by starting with being more entrepreneurial, understanding that it's a business. And what we're saying today is, for all of the clients we've done that with over the years, that's important, but it's not enough. It's not going to be enough to maintain a competitive advantage as we move into these next 10 years. And you're going to have to play a bigger game. You're going to have to innovate. You're going to have to create greater client value, more customization, and you're going to have to improve the bonds that you have with your referral sources and your clients. And so what all of these observations and trends have led us to in Atticus is the strategic pathway. And this is the strategic pathway to ensuring that we can have a competitive advantage. Steve, do you want to talk a little bit about this?
Yeah, this is important because I don't think a lot of lawyers really appreciate what is occurring in the marketplace. And one of the things that we were able to do at Atticus is we start looking at what we saw, because we've been in this business for 20 years. Mark, you founded the company. You and Sean have really built an amazing curriculum. And one of the things that we've seen is that there's actually a pathway that lawyers go through. So if you follow the steps, you can go to market dominance quicker, meaning in half the time, and cheaper, less money invested, if you know the path, basically if you know what rocks to step on. And what we've seen in the marketplace is a lot of lawyers are hanging out what we call status quo, which is they're just kind of doing it. And what you can tell a lawyer in status quo, their profit margins are thin. They're working long days. They're working weekends. They're completely frustrated with their staff. They're having turnover in staff. They're dealing with constant interruptions, whether those interruptions are in the office or via email, via text, via phone call. And their stress levels are very, very high. And these are lawyers that are just slowly but surely being burned out inside their practices. They're being cooked by the own pressure. The pressure cooker around them is just really getting to them. And what we've seen is that when lawyers really make a critical distinction or a critical decision to move to a business owner, everything shifts. And this is a big decision. And this is where they start to put systems in place. They start having a greater focus about who they serve and how they serve in the marketplace. They start getting really clear about how to market and develop a great referral base, how to get clear in the marketplace who they want to work with and how they get those people, and they get better on the clients they work with. They get better on pricing. They focus more on profit margin. And they start building a good team, not a great team. Here they're just learning management. They're getting their fingers and hands, around what does it mean to be a good manager as a lawyer. And they start cutting away the weekends and protecting the weekends and evenings for their own rejuvenation, their family. And so they start, once they make this decision, they start to shift. And from there, they really, and you can see maybe a lawyer will hang out here for 2 to 5 years, and if they don't get comfortable, then they move to the next level. And what we see the next level is what we call a market leader. And the market leader is someone that really has the ability to drive revenue. We see this in the Double Your Revenue workshop. We see this in our upper level programs, where the lawyer can really intentionally, consciously be able to build the business, drive greater revenue and greater profits while taking greater time off. And in this case, they start to have a great team. They don't have a good team. They have all-stars. And they start to become market innovators, and they start to being asked to speak more and more in their association. They get to be the people that are keynote presenters or breakout presenters in their associations. They get known more in the industry. And then we start to see the next level, which is really what we're talking about today, is where they start to dominate the market. They get known as the go-to attorney by their peers. And in some cases, their peers start to become their customers, meaning that attorneys hire this attorney. And what's really interesting is that if they drive the business well, they start to get a greater percentage of their income from the profits of the practice, Mark, not just from the work they do, but from how they structure the business of the practice. And so they start making greater profits and becomes more and more of a pure business than it is a typical law practice. And these people are the market leaders. And when I say, and they start to really control and dominate and influence the market. And this doesn't mean their names on the back of the bus or their names on the billboard. If they want to do that, that's great. But in our experience, what we're looking for to be the dominant leader is, do they have that badge of the go-to attorney, not only by their peers, but by their referral sources and by their clients. Mark, is there anything you want to add to the strategic pathway conversation? Because for me, if you look at, if lawyers look at this, this is kind of like a 4-step or a 4-tier process to become a market leader.
I said their 4-step program. I was thinking 12-step. Like the 12-step program. But it is, because the truth is, this is the pathway that you're going to identify yourself on. And it's also the pathway to develop that competitive advantage. So the thing you should know is that 80% of your marketplace is sitting at status quo, if not more. And that's who's out there right now. And most of you that are in this call right now, you wouldn't be looking at this program if you weren't at least at the business owner level, running a fairly successful practice. And quite frankly, that's where most Atticus graduates are today. But as Steve said, people can get comfortable and hang out there too long. Sometimes they join mastermind groups, which are good, but what we found is, and Steve and I have run enough of them ourselves, that mastermind groups come up with great ideas, and they'll bring in guest speakers, and you'll have some great social contact. But what we don't see out of good mastermind groups is innovation, true implementation of innovation. We don't see people dominating the market. We don't see them doubling their revenue. We don't see them taking significant time off the practice. And that's the difference between things like that and being on a on a strategic pathway to dominate the market. It gives you direction, it gives you focus. And so as we look at this and we talk about the program Dominate Your Market, I can tell you that if you're listening to this webinar or watching this webinar, you're somewhere on this pathway. But for the Dominate Your Market, it's clearly not for everyone. So you should be someone, when we think about this, somebody that's successful by most everyone's standard, your standards, the people around you. There's going to be a competitive spirit at heart. If that isn't there, if you're not somebody that looks around the marketplace and you see a competitor getting a leg up and that doesn't bother you, this probably isn't a program for you. Or if you see yourself getting a little bit complacent, that you feel like you're losing your edge, you're not being challenged enough, then this is the program for you. So it's clearly for successful attorneys that are on that strategic pathway. But those attorneys are also challenged. Steve, maybe you can speak to some of the challenges that successful attorneys have.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. Because this is my experience. Because I've been practicing for almost 25 years. Most of the lawyers that I personally coach would be easily considered market leaders, if not dominant players. And one of the things that I've seen is that what we would call a successful lawyer is that they've got some significant blind spots. And these are some of the interesting things that the Dominate Your Market program is designed to help them break through. Because the first thing I see is they start to get consumed more and more by the management stuff of running a practice. So what they loved was being a great lawyer, and now what they're having to deal with is being more and more of a manager and more of an administrator and less of a lawyer. And they start to get consumed by this. More and more of their time is eaten up daily and weekly by this particular function. To a certain extent, the ones that really build bigger operations feel like they're chasing cash flow, and they can get caught on what I call a month-to-month treadmill, and they're just doing legal work with the intention of generating cash to cover overhead and cover their own personal expenses, but no time or money or effort is being invested in improving the practice. They're just running. And they're really, more and more of them are running in place and they are getting ahead. And the third thing I see, they start to max out their personal productivity. And the term I use is they feel like they're capped out. They're working as many hours as they possibly can. They think they're charging what they possibly can in the marketplace, and they've reached their limit. And then what really, really kills them is that what I call the trap of relative success. They look around the marketplace, and they say in comparison to their peers, they think they're up for 10 or 20%. And when this occurs, good clearly becomes the enemy of great, and all innovative thinking stops because they think they're on the top of the pyramid. And these are when this is the point when they become the most vulnerable. And then of course we see them get comfortable. And once they get comfortable, they've got enough clients to make a comfortable living, they got enough work to pay for things, and they just kind of settle into that nice, cushy comfort zone. And they stop taking risks because they start to worry more and more about what their peers think. They start to worry about what other lawyers will think, what their community will think, and that status slowly but surely becomes a quiet choke point. They quit taking risks. They quit playing big, and they just kind of hang out. And they just don't take. It's really sad because they're now they're really at the peak of their legal skills. They're really terrific lawyers, And they just kind of start to hang out being really terrific lawyers, but not really great innovators and great thinkers about what it takes to take the practice to the next level. And sometimes they get frustrated. They're like, why do I want to even bother going to the next level? Because all I'm doing right now is working for my staff. I'm making sure my associates are paid. I'm making sure my partners are fed. And I'm not really, I don't feel like anyone's working for me. The thing has kind of flipped on it. And the other thing that's really a challenge is that they don't take any strategic thought to creating profit zones. Instead, they think the only way they can increase profitability is to raise their rates, work more, or take more work on. And they don't take a step back and say, how do I create a department here that can generate a profit, that can be managed by someone else, that I don't have to stay on top of every single moment of every single day. And these are things that I see successful lawyers get blinded by, and it stops them. And it just stops them cold, and they don't realize it. They're just blind to it.
So good job on that, Steve. I just want to jump in. So we know why we should be thinking about dominating a market. Either you really get the trends that are happening. You get that the trends are accelerating. You get that you're successful on the strategic pathway, but success is becoming the enemy of great for you, and that you're not being challenged, you're not playing a big game. These sort of things aren't happening. And if that's so for you, and you know why we should be looking at dominating the market, the question is, more practically, how do you dominate your market? And when Steve and I look at this, what we notice is that the first place that you have to start in dominating the market is a commitment. And by what we mean a commitment, you have to literally say, I am going to be the dominant player. I am going to be the go-to attorney in the marketplace. And when you start to do that, and for us, by the way, and I hate to put a shameless plug, but where that shows up is when people commit to the program. And they say, I'm in, I'm playing this game, everything changes. They start to see opportunity where they didn't see it before. They start to see the gap between where they are today and what it's going to take them to get to the next level. They start to look at their team differently. They start to look at opportunities. They start to look at all of the frustrations they're dealing with, and they start changing things and adjusting themselves to go for it. The second part is attitude. Steve, you want to talk a little bit about attitude when it comes to dominating the market?
Yeah, it's kind of it flows from the commitment conversation, but attitude starts to be a lot more about how they show up. Most lawyers that are really great at what they do they have a commitment to learning, and they have a tendency to just continue to hone their craft, and not really focus on honing their business skills or just honing their legal skills. And they start to shift. So they say, well, if I'm going to play for dominating my market, what's there for me to learn? And they have to learn more about what it takes to run the business, manage the business. They have to be open to the possibility that they're not going to know everything there is to know. You know, there's some things that they're going to be completely blind to. And they've got to work through one of the challenges that I see with very successful lawyers is boredom. You know, they're bored doing the same work over and over, and because of that, they take on really complex and crazy work, and they take on some really interesting cases to deal with boredom. And that's a reflection of where that really keen mind of theirs, when they have the attitude of learning and being excited about practice, is kind of decayed and devolved into taking on really crazy cases with really complex, complex components to it. And they lose that. And so when they play the game to dominate your market, the attitude shifts to more of a great challenge. What can I do? How can I be that market player? Which then takes us to the conversation around team.
And it's almost like when you say attitude, Steve, it's almost like a swagger starts too. You know, you start to see a little swagger in there, and you start living into that. But when you talk about team, we're talking more than your staff. So we know that you wouldn't be successful today if you didn't have a good staff around you today. But to go to the next level, and when you want to dominate your market, your staff has to start to develop an ownership mentality. They have to demonstrate they can do things and run the practice, and not fully be dependent on you to get everything done. It's a big shift when they take on the owner mentality, become proactive, look for problems, look for solutions, and start putting things in to play that you hadn't even thought about. But team is more than just your staff. When it comes to dominating your market, you start surrounding yourself with collaborative peers, non-competing peers that challenge you, that bring out your best thinking, bring out your best ideas, bring out your best innovations. And you also, for like anything else in life, when you go for something big, whether it's in sports or music, if you want to start to master something, you start surrounding yourself with great coaches that see a bigger future for you than you even see for yourself. And they hold you accountable to that. And they don't put up with the BS. And not only them, but your entire team starts to see where their BS shows up, and they call you on it, which is one of the biggest gifts we'll get. And you also have to start thinking about defining, if you're going to dominate a market, you have to start thinking about defining the market and the niche.
Yeah, and this is really important, Mark, because when you start to define the market and niche, it requires a couple things. First off, I want to be clear, this is dominate your market, not world domination.
Right.
Which means you can't conquer the entire world at once. So if you really are going to hone your skills to take your practice to the next level, the first thing we got to do is get clear about what that market is. And then we have to be clear that it may be a geographic market, it may be a neighborhood market, it may be statewide, it may be national, depending on how defined your niche is. And the thing is that my experience in coaching and working with attorneys that really are market dominant players is they're really clear about their niche. They can't be all things to all people. So defining your market and getting your niche really leads to a really strong strategy towards market domination, which I think, Mark, leads us to the last point, which is business mastery.
You know, and this is an odd one for people because they say, well, what does business mastery have to do with dominate your market? But in the game that we play in dominate your market, it has everything to do with it. And it's sort of like, say, what does excellence have to do with my life? Excellence has everything. A top performer's excellence has everything about it, and so does mastery. So there has to be some demonstration of mastery as you continue to be a player in the marketplace. And entrepreneurial mastery. So we're talking about making sure that we're still seeing significant time off from the practice, significant increases in profit versus wage or the salary you pull out. So you're pulling out more passive income. And we start to see that the systems are retuned and fine-tuned, and it's less dependent on you. All of these things are start to demonstrate your business or entrepreneurial mastery, which is a very, very, very big part of doing all of this work. And I think that when we talk about how to dominate, you have to start thinking about, well, how would I know if I've dominated the market? So, Steve, what would be if you were looking at someone dominating the market? And I think everyone on this call has to ask the same question. How would I know if I was dominating the market? But, Steve, what would be some of the benchmarks in your mind?
Some of the benchmarks in my mind are one of my favorites that I coach and I play for in my practice, what we call the trifecta referral. And a trifecta referral means that you're getting a great case referred by 3 different independent sources that don't know each other. So it may be another lawyer, it may be a CPA, it may be a financial professional who all say that you or your firm are the go-to person. You know, the other thing is that that's a really great criteria for referral-based marketing. But if you're really looking at what's available on the internet and social media, the other criteria is that we want you to be in the top 3 of the Google search engines or all the search engines. The other thing that I think is important is client referrals. And a lot of lawyers say things like, well, I get a lot of business from my clients, or all my business comes from my clients. For me, you're not really a dominant market player till at least 50% of your great cases are coming from your existing clients. And this is a critical benchmark. And then, of course, I think another one is attorney-to-attorney referrals. You know, and Mark, I think one of the things that we've experimented with it and we've seen that's a very, very interesting approach is doing brand surveys. Could you talk a minute about what you think about brand surveys and the strategy there?
It's actually more than brand surveys. So you're not going to see these really out there in the marketplace too easily for the legal profession. Some other professions do it, but the legal profession is not really available to them too easily. But in the Dominate Your Market program, we will be doing market surveys to determine your actual place in the marketplace. So from what your peers think to where you show up on Google searches to how you rank to the other competitors in the marketplace. So we will be doing that, but it's very observable, and we can get some clear benchmarks on doing it. So Steve, what I'd like to do is I'd like to talk a little bit about, I know we've talked about the reason why, how people should do it, the benchmarks, but let's go ahead and I'm going to jump to if this is something that's interesting you and exciting you and you say this is getting my competitive juices going, let's talk a little bit about how the Dominate Your Market program works and some of the logistical elements. And then Steve and I will talk about what we think are the 10 crucial reasons that everybody that's already successful should do this program. So Steve, I'll just jump into these if it's okay with you.
That's great.
Okay, so the program is fairly simple. It's going to be coached and facilitated by Steve and I. It's the only program that Steve and I will facilitate together. So you're getting the two top coaches in the country in this program. There's 4 sessions annually. They're live. Each session is a day and a half, and they're built so that you fly in, fly out. And what we mean by that, you'll come in on a Thursday. The program will start at 1:30. It's done in a very convenient facility, so usually it's done at the Orlando Hyatt at the airport. You fly in, no transportation needed. You're in the airport, the hotel, beautiful hotel there. We start at 1:30 in the afternoon, so you come in that day. We finish that evening at 6 p.m., and then we do some good networking. And then we start the next morning, Friday morning at 8:30. We finish at 3:30, so you can fly right out. So it's very convenient for most people. Each session is going to have transformational content. It's going to connect you with like-minded peers that are going to do exactly what we talked about earlier. They're going to bring out your best thinking. They're going to help you develop your best ideas. And you'll leave each session with a game plan, a Dominate Your Market game plan. After every session, Steve and I will do a post-game review for those of you that you have a sort of a conversation like this where we recap what happened in your assignments. And then in between sessions, you're going to have an accountability call with one of our key resource assistants. They're going to make sure that you're staying focused on the off time between our sessions. They're going to be the eyes and ears for Steve and I. You'll have a practice advisor on call to you so that if you have concerns, anyone that's familiar with Atticus will know that we have advanced tools for implementation that are all going to be available to you. All of the worksheets, forms, all of the turnkey systems are part of this program. There'll be an exclusive Dropbox where we'll be able to share ideas between the participants in the program. And you'll know if the program is right, by the way, number one, if the competitive spirits start to get you moving on this. But you should have a minimum of $200,000 in personal income as a bare minimum to get into this program. You should be very coachable. Your law firm should be considered successful today. This is not going to be a restorative program where we're working on the simplest of systems and process. This is an advanced process. It's clear that you're right for it if you want that unfair advantage of having this kind of team around you. And you've got to be, the thing that we watch out for these programs is make sure that we watch out. It's a technical term we use internally called the jerk quotient. We want to make sure that that the people that are playing in this can play well with others and they're collaborative in the process. To participate in this program, there's a one-time per firm charge of $3,000. That's to start up, and then it's $9,500 for the first attorney. Some attorneys will bring another one from their firm, and that is $7,500, and then they'll bring their key assistant. Some people like to bring their key assistant with them, and the key assistant to bring for the entire annual program is $3,500. Reserve these dates. The first session is the 18th and 19th of April. It will be at the Hyatt in Orlando. You don't have to write all these dates down right now, but if you're qualified and you get into the program, we'll make sure you have all of these dates. If for the litigators, sometimes things come up like a trial, and you may have to miss a session. What Steve and I do is we do a recap with the key points, with the systems that need to be worked on, and with assignments, and then we're going to guide you through that so you get through the next 90 days and you don't feel like you've missed out too much. Steve, anything I missed on the logistical conversation before we go to the 10 crucial reasons?
No, the one thing I would like to point out in logistics is that it's really designed for you to fly in the morning and fly out the next night. So you're only there one night, and so it looks like a lot, but we found that this format is a very effective format for our other group workshops.
Okay, so let's jump into the 10 crucial reasons that people want to participate. Number one, as we said, you've got to be qualified, but if you are, these are the reasons to do it. Everything changes when you commit. Your attitude shifts. We talked about this earlier. You see opportunities. Steve likes to say you're not in Kansas anymore. And it's like that. You go from black and white to color in this program. So it really starts to become really a breakthrough process for people.
The second thing about this, Mark, is that this is a really important point, that we're doing this as a market-exclusive program. So when you're in the Dominate Your Market program, it's going to be exclusive to your practice area and your market. So our goal is to give you an unfair advantage in the marketplace. So if you're in this program, you will lock your competitors out.
Which is, for me, very important, because, that's and the other reason for this is we want to make sure that we can share ideas, and that's an important part of it. And so
well, you got to have the ability. I'm sorry, Mark. You got to have the ability to put everything on the table and feel confident with it. I've been in coaching programs before where my biggest competitors in the same program, a table away from me. So it's really hard for me or for him to feel confident talking about new ideas and new market initiatives when your major competitor is, one table away. So it's really important for me. Number two is very critical. Number three, Mark, you want to talk about number three?
Yeah, coaching works. We've had a number of our Atticus clients that have gone through, had dramatic gains in their practice after something like the Practice Builder or the the Double Your Revenue. But what happens is or working with one of the practice advisors, and then they jump off and they stop, and they notice they get comfortable and they stop going after things. They lose that edge. And what we know is that coaching works. Once you decide you're going to play a big game, it just makes things happen a lot faster. The window of opportunity is not open that long on some of these things, and you want to get through there as fast as you can. And we also know that you want to surround yourself, and this sounds terrible coming from Steve and I in the sense that it's not very humble, but we know the marketplace. And I think most of you know the marketplace, and I don't think you'll find, let me say this more for Steve, I work my best at being humble, but the truth is Steve is one of the most extraordinary coaches that you'll be able to be in front of. And I think for most people, to be able to get into something like this and have this kind of participation and coaches is extraordinary. Steve, do you want to talk about the innovation part?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the compliment, Mark. And the law firm innovations, one of the challenges that we have is that lawyers will say things like, well, what kind of innovations can I implement? And the thing is that the whole idea behind creating innovation is processing questions, and accountability. So when you look at this, you're going to create innovations out of the program. We'll share some processes and concepts that will stimulate thinking, will stimulate innovation. It'll be up to you to take it, invest in it, and run with it. That's really up to you to test drive things and then invest in them and make them work in your marketplace. And really, when it comes to innovation, you don't have to be extraordinary. You just have to be a little bit better than your competitors. Maybe 10%, maybe 20% better, because in the legal marketplace, being 20% better looks absolutely like breakthrough. It looks just absolutely breakthrough.
For me, Steve, the difference is though, innovations in the marketplace, and this sounds terrible, but if you're in mastermind groups, they're sometimes a dime a dozen sometimes, but no one implements them. And that's the other thing. They just don't get them in place.
Well, the mastermind groups are what happens. They devolve into study groups and social clubs.
Yeah, I agree.
And there's nobody driving it, no one leading it, and they bring in speakers and they talk about books and they share ideas, but nothing else really comes out of it than a feel-good exclusivity, and that's it. And if you're not driving something out of it, and that's why number 6 is so important to me, is that your membership is an annual program. And for me, the goal for us is that you get at least 10 times greater return on your investment. In addition to that, you're going to have more time off. You're going to get greater profitability from passive revenue or profit zones inside your practice. And you're going to get, quite frankly, the opportunity to hang with some high-level peers, people that play the way you do in their marketplace, which I think leads us to number 7. You're not going to be in a position where you're going to be hanging out with people that are wannabes. These are players. These are people that are doing this. And they really are going to be challenging you, and they're going to take you. We had the A-Team here just because it was a great TV show, and hopefully everybody on the call can listen to it and reference it. But think of them as your A-Team. And if you do like a mastermind group, this becomes like your mastermind group with purpose.
And that's the important part, by the way, having a purpose to it. And we've talked about that before. So the other thing that comes out of this is referrals. We've noticed in the work that we've done before, when you're surrounded with successful players, advanced players, big players on a national basis, they send business, not only regionally, but they send business throughout the state. And so those people that are going to be in this program, they start to look at the other people in their community that they would like to have there, the other referral sources, other attorneys. They said, this person should be here. They're in a different practice area. They should be in there with me. So they get a co-conspirator to come with them, or they look nationally to see who else they should have playing in there with them.
That's a great way of looking at this, because if you're committing to a dominant marketplace game, it would be terrific to take some of your friends and colleagues and create the game together. It'd be a really powerful experience.
And so the 9th element to there, and I think this is, you've heard us talk about this throughout the session, in this thing you're going to be going from a very good team to a great team. And we're going to challenge you to build an organization of true superstars, that people are loyal, they love where they're playing, they bring great innovations and suggestions. So you definitely will be doing that in this program. And I think the last reason that most people should do this is we always have the Atticus Guarantee. If you decide after the first session that the program isn't for you, we'll provide a full refund. And that's it. That's how we operate. We've never, anybody that's participated with us in the past knows we produce results. And if you think that anywhere along the line we're full of baloney, not to worry about it. You'll get your money back. But it's after that first weekend. After that, you're in. You're ours, and we're yours. So that changes. So the only thing I would say that if you've listened to this and you're questioning whether this is the program for you and you think you qualify for it, and you've decided, I love this idea and I want to become the dominant player in my marketplace, then I'd say reserve your seat. One of the ways to do that is you can email Denise at atticusonline.com, or at any time you could always let Steve or I know, and we'd be able to direct you and get you in. But once we get your application, we'll take a look, make sure we agree on the marketplace, make sure there's not a competitor already in there, define the niche, and we'll get you moving. Steve, anything else that you want to say before we complete?
No, it's just a huge opportunity for the listener to make the decision Because if they're practicing now and they think they've got another 10 years of their practice left, they're going to put the time in anyway. So why not put the time in and play a big game called Dominate Your Market?
Good. Well, thank you, Steve. And Mike, thank you for hosting us. Mike, anything you want to do to be complete?
No, I think you guys did a great job, and if anybody has any questions, just to let us know. We're here to help.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Mike.